Okay, let me introduce myself. First of all, just make sure that you're at the right symposium, supporting the learning difficulty. So let me introduce myself. My name is Wong Teck. I'm the Assistant Dean for Year 4 at LKCMedicine, and also the chair for this morning's symposium. Morning, Sika. Okay, so now looking at the title, some thoughts must be running through your minds, like, so actually is this really a problem in medical education? And also, what is actually meant by the word difficulty, a learner having difficulty, and actually whose problem is it, right? And how should we deal with this issue? So for this symposium, what we have done is we have gathered 4 experienced educators to share their unique insights to the topic. And then after the presentations, we will provide a case study for presenters to discuss and also for the audience to discuss. Before I introduce our first presenter, let me first start off by saying that you've come to the wrong place if you're hoping to receive a checklist of things to do at the end of this session. Okay, like, oh, you do A, and you do B, you do C. What we hope that will happen is that at the end of the session is to have a better idea of what you can do in your setting based on the experience of our panelists. Because every situation is unique. So without much ado, let's introduce our first speaker. She's Dr. Faith Chia. She's the senior consultant from Seng Hospital. She's also the designated institutional officer for the National Healthcare Group Residency Program. So let's welcome Faith.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Faith Chia. I'm a rheumatologist by training, and I take care of the graduate medical education in NHG, which is our residency. So, Teck asked me to speak about supporting our learners in difficulty, and he asked me to touch a little bit about the work that we were doing about burnout in the residence, but I thought I would take a bit of a different slant, and I wanted to talk about wellness rather than burnout, although I will be talking a bit about burnout. So I don't know whether I'm an experienced educator, but when I took over the role of program director and later DIO, I thought I was just going to do some curriculum blueprinting and sign some documents, and it turned out that I needed an entire set of skills that would make me a good Aunt Agony as well for the residents. So sorry, Digita, I'm going to kill you with PowerPoint. So just a little bit about NHG education so that you can get an understanding of the setting that I'm working in. We are the residency program, and we're training postgraduate doctors who are becoming specialists. We have 27 residency programs right now, and currently in flight we have about 648 residents, all the way from PGY 2s to people who are PGY double digits or so. And we involve about 1,700 educators, and this cuts across both doctors, nurses, and health physicians, health professionals. So what really is residency training all about? And I think this is familiar to many of us, regardless of what names we call it. Our graduates start off with a PGY 1 year, where they have to go through housemanship. We call it PGY 1 now. And then in another couple of years, they are likely to join a junior residency program, which ranges from it's usually 3 years. And if they are then successful, they match into a senior residency program, which is the equivalent of the registrar track. And after that, some people will do a secondary accreditation, and finally they become a specialist. So you can see this is a rather long journey. And within this journey of gaining clinical skills and maturity, of course, there are multiple exams that they need to go through to add to their daily work. For example, in the internal medicine residency program, there are 7 exams that the residents have to go through in that 3 years, because they take both the MRCP as well as the American board exams. And then, of course, this just continues. And on top of that, there is the persistent lack of sleep, sleep deprivation that comes from doing multiple night calls, because that's what junior staff do. And our residents are also in that phase of their life where they're having many important life events. So they're getting married, and then they have children, and then they realize that having children is worse than doing night calls, and maybe going to work would be a good rest from having kids. And all of this really puts together a time of a lot of transition and things to go through. So how does that relate into wellness and burnout? I think we all know that we can't have a life without stress. That would be quite unexciting and unstimulating for most of us. We want to have a certain amount of stress that gives us a peak performance. And once we go beyond that, we end up in this area where we're tired, we become exhausted, there's a lot of anxiety, and then we get into burnout and breakdown. So Maslach defined burnout in 3 domains: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased personal accomplishment. And this is the scale, the burnout inventory that we used when we were looking at our residents. So I think we spoke about it in the panel this morning about how there's this tsunami of burnout coming within physicians, and the numbers are just getting frighteningly high. This is, of course, the US data from the 2017 Netscape Lifestyle report. I was kind of sad. Rheumatology used to be at the bottom of the burnout scale, and then this year we were like top 5. So I really should have chosen ophthalmology instead. So why is it important that we talk about burnout and wellness? So we know that burnout is bad for the patient. It gives you a physician who is not as able to engage in you, to have that much empathy. They may be distracted, they may be making medical errors, and that is, of course, devastating. It's bad for the physician themselves because, as this morning Professor Seng said, we want to be happy and healthy. And if you are burnt out, you're clearly not happy and very unlikely to be healthy, may not be sleeping well. That picture over there was supposed to be copious drinking and not the nice gin and tonic that we have after work. And then, of course, the just feeling of a great disengagement at work. So in 2017, we looked at our current state among some of the residency programs in our residency. As you can see, not many residency programs agreed to join us on this journey of looking at what burnout is, which could either have meant that they were doing very well or doing so badly they didn't want to know what it was. Anesthesia topped the list with the least burnout residents. But interestingly, anesthesia was a department that did both the residents as well as the consultants. And the consultants were much more burnt out than the residents, which I think you really have to think about how you're structuring your department that this is happening. At the top of the list, similar to what is found in other studies, was family medicine and internal medicine. So the numbers really quite surprised us, because at 67.9% of clinical significant burnout in the IM residents, when before we did this, we thought, the American numbers are like 50-60% right now. We come from coolie stock. We are stoic, we can do it. But then the numbers, the percentages were really quite high. Of course, we were seeing that in the residents that we had to counsel, in people who were trying to take leave of absence or dropping out because they just felt they could not cope with what they were going through. So we asked ourselves, is residency to blame for this? Like, what have we done to the students to create such burnout in them? And last year, or this year really, this May, we looked at the PGY1s who were starting housemanship. So I administered this questionnaire in that week of orientation before they actually started work. This was done in Tock Seng Hospital. We had a very small number of housemen who are doing this. Is their very first posting, never worked before, fresh graduates, both from LKC as well as from Wong. And 78.6% of them had high emotional exhaustion or depersonalization, and 28.5% were high risk in all 3 domains. Only 28.5% felt they were confident to start their roles as housemen. I guess this is not unsurprising, most of us feel like that. And their median sleep, we looked at how much they exercised, and it was dismal. And the median sleep was about 4 to 5 hours a night. So what we've been trying to do in our setting, and we're fairly young in this journey, so I would just like to share with you our experiences about how are we working out a system to support wellness in our learners. And we did use a combination of the AMA Steps Forward framework as well as the IHI Joy in Work. So that there's a little bit of a checklisting. It's not my checklist, it's the AMA Steps Forward checklist. And first of all, we thought we wanted to create a framework. So we rounded up the advocates who were interested in wellness, who wanted to be in with us on our wellness committee. Interestingly, this was a committee that spanned quite a number of residencies, included faculty as well as residents, and it was a predominantly female committee. Given the fact that we are still predominantly male, when I went to school there was a quota on how many girls could be in the class, but yet I only had one guy on this committee. So we did a lot of groundwork in the various programs. We secured support from our leadership, and we were very fortunate to have very strong support from our senior management at cluster level. And then we tried to define what's our current status, which was the data that I had already presented, which was really very depressing to us at the time, and what was our ideal state of how we envisioned joyful and productive learners. One of the things that came out quite strongly in our sort of feedback from the residents was this idea about psychological safety. And I think that's not just the safety to make mistakes and to learn. It's also safety to be who you are and to bring your whole self to your workplace and learn wholeheartedly. And so this is an issue that we are working on as well in residency. We then moved on to trying to develop a program, and what we did then from the literature reviews were that organizational directed intervention seemed to have more impact than individual intervention. So there's really no point telling our residents you should go and do yoga or go and run or eat better. So we tried to work on things that we could do at a more organizational level. But because each program was different, we had to customize it. What worked for the orthopedic program would probably not be working for the internal medicine program. The palliative people do a lot of reflective writing, right? I think the surgeons struggle a little bit with that sometimes. And we also said that we want to add an element of play into our program. We don't want it to be all workshops and things that we do at work. And then we want to educate learners and faculty. Just keep talking about this issue. We did try to do what matters to you, which is the post-its that you see. A lot of the post-its revolved around food and friends, and I think that's important for all of us really, not just the junior staff. Some of the programs tried to do was sort of like gratitude, increase gratitude. So you have a jar of gratitude, and residents as they come for teaching would put on a post-it what they are thankful for that day. When we looked at all the programs, we had multiple factors that came out about why residents said these were the things they felt were contributing to burnout. And we grouped them into intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. One of the intrinsic factors was pretty much similar to what we're talking this morning about how it's all ingrained in us to work hard and work harder, and the sense of hyper-responsibility just did not allow residents to let go when it was time for them to finish the shift. They would come early if they felt that they were not quite on with their patients, they needed to have more time. There was a lot of fear of failing and making mistakes, and there's some mismatch of expectations of what it would be like to be a resident, as well as the faculty expectation and the residents' expectation. And one of the things that came out was that they felt a lack of sense of identity, because our residents are not permanent staff in our hospital, so they almost felt like transient migratory workers going from department to department and not really belonging to anyone during that time. Extrinsic factors, of course, multiple exams and long working hours, despite the fact that we track duty hours rigorously, a lot of tedious administrative tasks, and this did not just relate to residency like case logging and things like that, but also the amount of administrative tasks that they needed to do for each patient contact. We're all on electronic medical records. It takes me longer to print and see than it does for me to do a 44 joint count for my patient. So clearly that's not where I want to be spending my time, but it is. Manpower issues, demanding patients, and anxiety about their future jobs were all themes that came up as well. So we did a lot of work with building social support systems that included both residents and faculty. Food centered around a lot of this. This amazingly are the surgeons painting. So we did an art therapy day where they got together and painted together. We've had sports days, which we do. This was an internal medicine one where we did across all three sponsoring institutions. And we won the netball. And we try to also do a little bit of community engagement, sort of like paying it back to the community. We bring our residents out to do this was bingo in an old folks home, and things like that. One of the things that one of the orthopedic chief residents said was, if it doesn't work, just keep at it. And this was, as you can see, a very statistical significant difference between the first social engagement we had and the last one. But it was really just about them getting together and drinking beer. We also wanted to do to talk more about supporting individual wellness. And we have a foundation module for the PGY1s when they come in, where we talk to them about the importance of self-care. I think that's something that we all tend to, we don't do well, and we do not necessarily role model well as well, since like Nigel sending emails at 11:30 at night. And it goes around nutrition, providing healthy meals at teaching, trying to get people together. There are some running groups in the hospital, making sure they have adequate time off work, that they can actually disengage from work and do their own things to feel like themselves again, and also building up a support with mentorship as well as buddy systems, so that we don't feel that we're alone in this. We did try to use this was from Vanderbilt. It's a very nice physician wellness system, and we learned a lot from them. So we tried to use their resilience toolkit as a sort of guide on what are the things that we could do. And really we wanted to empower faculty and learners to tackle burnout. This wasn't just about education, about talking about it. The first time that I had someone who actually came up to me when I was program director and said, I'm really burnt out and I need to take time off. And I said, well, then you should, because you're in for the long run, right? And time off is a really, it's a shameful thing. Is seen as a shameful thing among other people. And after I said that, the next day the girl came to me, the resident came to me, she said, I have 4 other friends who want to talk to you. And for a while, my heart sank. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to run a service with 5 people out of it? But at the same time, that just told me how important it was, that this was how people were feeling, and that they didn't feel safe enough to come and tell anyone about it until somebody made that first step and realized that it was acceptable. It was something that your program director will support you on. What we did was that we tried to get our residents into house systems. So I think Tanya's going to talk about that as well. So we put them into houses, and we try to do training for the faculty and the peer leaders to recognize burnout, for them to be the first touch, because we know that our residents are much likely to talk to their peer mentors and their registrars than they are to talk to the faculty directly. And we did, some programs also have a psychiatrist who acts as an advisor, a peer support for the residents, advisor to the faculty, sometimes peer support for the faculty as well. And lastly, we really want to work on building this as a sustainable culture, and it's not just a residency thing, it's something that our whole institution is working on, and our hope is that while we started this work in residency, that we will expand it out to all junior staff, regardless of whether they are trainees or not, because we're all really in this together. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Faith. Okay, we'll leave questions to the end. For our second speaker, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tanya Tierney, who's the Assistant Dean for Clinical Communication Training and Student Welfare at LKCMedicine. Welcome, Tanya.
Moving from postgraduate to undergraduate context, although very similar themes. So I want to talk to you about the house system that we have here at LKCMedicine. And I don't know if any of you noticed on level 8 yesterday at dinner that that's where our house rooms are. I'll show you those later. Okay, so we have a school mission, and our school mission has words in it like humanity and doctors that you and I would like caring for us, which which means we're trying to produce very specific kinds of doctors that work with their heart as well as their head. And we really strongly believe that in order for our students to come out the other side and survive medical education, being that kind of doctor, that we have to support them in the same way as we want them to support their their patients in the future. And I think that Faith has done a very good job in introducing the challenge that stress and burnout, as well as being prevalent in the healthcare community, is also present amongst medical students. And the additional stress and things like the hidden curriculum, and we've heard sessions on kind of moral conflict and things like that. And these all put stresses on the students. Students can feel lost if they don't have a solid support system. So this is our house system. When we opened, we had names. Our houses had names. And the rest of everything you see on this slide has been created by our wonderful students. The sketches, the crests have been designed, the choice of colour and animal, and there's currently a booth about the house system in level 4 in the Mersu space, and you can see there all the descriptions as to why each house has chosen a particular colour and a particular animal, which is fascinating. So how does this work? Each house, the 5 houses, has a senior house tutor, and then currently 6 additional house tutors, and they're a mix of clinicians and scientists. The number of house tutors, as we've grown as a school, has grown, and we keep a ratio of 1 house tutor per 4 students in our largest academic year, which means that a house tutor has about 20 students in total across the 5 years. Each student is allocated to a personal tutor, so although the house is a community, there is somebody that is keeping an eye on every single student, and that means that there's no student that's going to struggle and kind of slip through the net without a house tutor going, hey, are you okay? But the students importantly have access to all the tutors in their house, and often this does work as a community, because it may be that a particular student, the topic they want to talk about, they connect with a different house tutor in a different way. And it might be something, the tutor has a clinical house tutor, but they're struggling with deciding what scholarly project to do in year 4, and they're interested in doing some science. They might want to talk to one of the scientists. Or a student that has a scientist as their house tutor is, wanting to finding it difficult to adapt to the clinical setting, and then a clinical house tutor might be more appropriate to talk to. As well as that, we have a buddy system. So NTU across all of its schools has a buddy system, which is a near-peer support system where new students coming in are mentored by year 2 students, and we've embedded this system within our house system. So that there will be fellow students in the same house that will become the buddies, and the students kind of refer to this as their house families, and these are multi-generational. So it really is a community rather than a kind of linear student-tutor relationship. These are the house rooms I made reference to earlier. So this provides physical space for each house. And in the early years we didn't have this. Of course, moving into this building a couple of years ago kind of brought another dimension to the house system. And actually, the students will correct me if I'm wrong, but when I walk up to level 8, I see that the house rooms are more occupied than the general student lounge, and often students will hang out within their house rooms. We have regular meetings in a variety of different contexts, so it might be individual meetings. Each student has set times to meet with their house tutor to talk about, might be personal things, kind of in-course assessment, exam results. They do peer feedback as part of their team-based learning process, and they go through the feedback with their house tutors. Or it might be to talk about personal difficulties, stress, illness, relationships, finances, those kind of things. We also have group meetings at year levels. So the tutors will meet the students from a particular year, and the topic of conversation is something that's topical for that phase. So if there's an exam coming up, it's preparation. It may be transitioning. We've heard the challenges of transitioning into medical school from preclinical to a more clinical setting, and then transitioning out the other side. So there might be topical discussions about, hey, what's it going to be like when I start my clinical attachments? We cover issues of personal development as well, so time management, stress management, those kind of things. We also have house meetings where we aim to bring together students from all years of the cohort within their houses. These tend to be more social. We have very broad outcomes which give a lot of scope. So broad outcomes is developing a sense of community and belonging, and we've heard from Faith how important that can be. And it does mean that, saying we're going to go and play paintball or have a barbecue makes it still an activity that is worthwhile. And if you are a clinical house tutor, you have permission and you are paid to cancel a clinic and come and play football with students. I mean, how awesome is that job? It really develops a sense of community. Some of these house events involving all years also then become inter-house. There's sports, there's performances and quizzes, and there's nothing better for building community within the house than having a bit of friendly competition with the other houses. The house system also has a prominent role in some of our key events. So for example, the white coat ceremony, the house tutors have the honour, and I think it really is an honour, of standing side by side with the dean on stage and conferring the white coats to the students. And this really, I think, reflects the important role the house tutors play in helping our students develop their professional identity as future doctors. So with all of these meetings, it means that students are meeting with their house tutors probably at least once every 2 months, and the contexts vary from formal to informal and from individual to a whole house. And the really important purpose of this is that the students and the tutors get to know each other very well. Because we know that much as we would love the journey to be a smooth sail for every single student, that there are cases, many cases, where that journey is not so smooth. And what's really important is that at times of difficulty, the student feels that they have somebody they can ask for help. And we know that a lot of systems, you've given a contact for a student to go and ask this person for help. They don't know them. It's really hard. So having that strong relationship means that the students feel more able to ask for help. The tutors are more likely to notice, hey, do you know what? You're not quite yourself today. Is there something happening? And we see this kind of overlap, so the students' academic and professional life is a key thing, but of course outside of that they're their own person, but they can imprint on each other. So, it could be the stress of study is affecting them personally, it could be something happening in their personal life, illness or family problems, relationship problems, is distracting them from their studies. And it's really important that that the house tutors are able to kind of support them through that. Other ways we see pick up difficulties, we have a concern form, so anyone can let us know if they're worried about one of our students. And I think in some contexts this is seen as a sort of a red flag about professionalism, but actually it can be related to difficulties with professionalism, or it could be academic, that the student is struggling to meet the needs of the curriculum. But also, if you're a clinician and you see one of our students there 23.5 hours a day, 7.5 days a week, and you never see them eat and you never see them sleep, and they're kind of fading in front of your eyes and you're really worried, then that's also a really appropriate reason to use the concern form and say, hey, I'm really worried about this person. And we have processes where we can work out how to best support the student, and all of that is supported by the house tutors. We know that the observations we've made, that the house tutors, notice if students are not quite their usual self. Hopefully, we know that mostly students feel able to offer support when needed or ask for support, and that difficulties can be picked up. And because it's a continued relationship through the 5 years, that the support is ongoing. Each house has its own feel. A house room provides a space for that, and the students kind of tell us that they have a sense of community and belonging. And the tutors actually, this is really interesting, that when I spoke to some of the tutors, that they also feel supported by the system. They enjoy the interaction with the students, they enjoy the fact that they feel valued by the students, and they get support from each other and from the students. And they really value training on key issues on well-being and student support. So, you know, it's really kind of more than pastoral care. And I just want to run out of time, so I'm just going to leave you with some quotes from our second stage review of our curriculum a couple of years ago that gave some very nice feedback about the house system. Thank you very much.
Okay, for our third speaker, we have Mr. Lawrence Lim. He's the Principal Medical Social Worker from the Care and Counselling Department of Seng Hospital. So let's welcome Lawrence.
My volume is loud enough at the back. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for introducing and allowing me to have the opportunity to come here to share with everybody about this topic, supporting learners with difficulty. First thing first is that I've been thinking about this title and about the learners and as well as difficulty. So I was thinking of difficulty in terms of very much more of the challenges, okay, that our learners might be facing. And as Prof Wong was saying, is that we are, in fact, he has been reminding me, okay, for the past few days, many times, that I have only 10 minutes. Okay. So really, I might not have really had much of a checklist, or in case you're looking for the know-how of how am I going to, what do I do with the learners in terms of the journey with them. But basically, I'm here to share with everybody in terms of the journey with the learners about this. So for me myself, I am also in my difficulty. I'm struggling with my master's course in health profession education, so I'm still learning. And for me myself, I'm the education lead in my department of Seng Hospital Care and Counselling, overseeing training, internal, external, supervision, induction, placements, internships, as well as attachment. So that's why I'm glad to have the opportunity to come here. And why these topics? Because as a medical social worker, this is probably part and parcel of our work, and this is also the topics that we usually journey with our learners. And what you are going to hear is very much share with you about learners such as medical students who come to our department for attachment, and even social work students as well as JC students who came to our department for attachment for visitations, and we managed to get them to share with us their reflections about this. So if everybody is good, and so I will continue. And I really like this 360 degree, so I might be moving around and making it quite easy and in case my difficulty. But I think the person with more difficulty will be the video man above around with me. Okay, let's start. Learn to reflect. Why learn to reflect? Because we all know reflective practice, the use of reflection in medical education is probably the way to go, and to develop both therapeutic relationships and professional expertise. So we have a medical student who shared with us after his attachment that how he managed to reflect, increase his awareness, okay, about the healthcare system, about his role, and understanding the importance of advocating for patients. And how he learned to be mindful in his work about himself, in his personal life, and in his professional life as well. And seeking the hope, embracing the hope, and how he can envision himself practicing in future. We also even have JC students who share with us that how the experience in observing our colleagues at work, it actually helps them to give some insight, being insightful about the stresses, okay, and about different people's perspective, and how it helps them to reflect about their own life and choices. And another medical student who was from overseas requested to come to Singapore for attachment with us, and in the dialogue, discussion, observation, case discussions, okay, And she shared with us the reflection. That reflecting may not come naturally, and it requires constant practice. Yeah, of course, she was able to apply some of the reflection model for Prof in terms of the what so what and what now framework. So in a way, how we are glad to see that our students, after going through their attachment with us, helping them to learn to reflect. Next, learn to feel. How do our students share with us how do they see emotions? Being able to be engaged, to be in touch with their feelings, with the emotions, and how they are able to view negative emotions as a third person and to control it, to manage it. And how they are able to see themselves evolve, to say that negative emotion may not be too bad, it can be good, because it can give you the right amount of motivation to do better. And she even shared, in learning to feel, learning about emotions is like a living being with love and empathy. And this is very much not from us, but it's very much from the learner who shared with us the reflection about feelings and emotions. And also she shared to learn, that she learned how to express her own emotions, learn to listen and understand what others are feeling. Another student shared with us how they learn to be engaged with the feelings, with the patient, to empathize with the patient, and to really, through the whole process, to test one's own ability to feel and to understand patients. And another student shared with us the process of learning, that he learned to do his best providing healthcare to patients through communication, genuinity, and empathy. And there's hope that no matter how challenging it is, you will not be disheartened, discouraged, continue to do his best. In a way, talking about emotional resilience in the process. Next, learn to feel. I got myself into difficult yet attractive fear. So, how do we see failure? I have an colleague who is now a consultant in geriatric care. So she ever shared is that in the past actually she did not think of going into elder care, geriatric care. She was thinking of another unit, which I will not say what is it, okay? And she was say that it's so, it's in the limelight, it's an open house, and quite a good job and all things, but she didn't make it, and she failed and the entry and all this, yeah. So later on, she actually then became into geriatrician in elder care, but she didn't share that actually she realized that her strength in engaging the elderly, in working with the caregivers of their geriatric patients, in so much meaning and satisfaction as a geriatrician. So what is failure? So the students share with us, not all problems are solvable. Therefore, we do not try to solve all the problems. And this is so encouraging because it comes from the students that they, even when they are studying, okay, they learn about failure, embracing failure. Next, learn to live. I know it can be, what is this? What we all live. But it's really about life. It's really about purpose. How do we see the purpose in life, and how do we help our learners, our students to do better life, and helping them to move on? What are their motivation, their values, their purpose, and being grounded in what they are doing and what they are pursuing. And students sharing with us is that how my colleagues in helping them, influencing them to understand the enthusiasm, the passion at work. And it's something that they can actually take away, which is something not so technical, but something which is the value and the purpose of what we are doing. As well as helping them to understand the reason why are we doing all these things, and also to convey the importance of what we are doing in our children. This is our department. We conduct induction orientation for our entry levels staff, colleagues. So we get them to share what keeps them going on, what is the area that they can appreciate themselves to move on. So examples, being optimistic, being empathetic, self-aware, being open-minded, reflective, and support, and so on. So why are we talking about this learn to die? Because the truth is, once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. Once we learn how to die, we learn how to live. And students sharing with us is that learning from my palliative care colleagues, understanding is what is needed when we approach the idea of death. I wonder, is this a taboo, or is this something that most of us avoid? But in healthcare education, when we are journeying with our learners, when we attend to the topic, when they are having difficulty, what do we avoid? How do we see ourselves supporting them in this journey, learning about death and dying? Famous author, who's also a doctor, is asking what doctors don't learn about death and dying. Death and dying confronts us, every one of us, and in his book is asking, why are we not trained to cope with mortality? Or are we training and learning? Because the first time, some cried, some shut down, and some hardly noticed. And we saw first death, we were so gathered at times. Yet we dream about the people and even nightmares. Death, of course, is not a failure. It is normal. It may be the enemy, something that we avoid, but it is also the natural order of things. And when we become doctor or healthcare professionals, for what we imagine to be the satisfaction of work, and that will turn out to be the satisfaction of others. So are we, as healthcare educators, ready to help our learners to learn, help them to build up the satisfaction in this competence? So you might be thinking that this is overseas people talking about this. Locally, Dr. Ivan attended one of our grief and bereavement workshops, and later on he shared with us, he himself is a leukemia patient. And as a doctor, he became a patient. And as a junior doctor, he also had a symptom. And he shared with us, he has seen death, he knows death, his mentor passed away, and mentor touched his life. But he shared with us, regardless of the art, and he shared also about one of our beloved healthcare colleagues who passed away quite some years back. There are 9 people, but 2 people who died. There's a lot of reflections as he helped us to learn to die, to learn about death and dying. And sharing with us, life is a journey despite the death and dying. So he was never in the dean's list, he was no published papers, all this and that, neither a trainee or a specialist, but he is a doctor, sharing with us his journey to death and dying. So what are we learning from this? So I like Gandhi shared with us, live as if we were to die tomorrow, learn as if we were to live forever. So over here, because of limited time, my time is up. I just want, that's why I'm only sharing one phrase here. And when we say about the young men, okay, it could mean every one of us. We could be educators, be learners, be the students, okay. So we are not going to war as soldiers, but are we, when we are facing challenges and difficulties in learning challenges, meeting the hurdles, are we learning? So if I may allow one last minute to appear, I don't think I have much difficulty to sing in a symposium. In case you have difficulty to hear me, okay? Where have all the young men gone? Long unseen. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone to soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? With that, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Can I introduce our last speaker, Dr. Jo Harris. She's the Deputy Head Undergraduate Medicine at Imperial College London, and she will try to speak without the mic.
I will. Can you hear me if I speak without the microphone?
Okay, thanks, Jo.
Easier than holding it. Yeah, thumb hurts as well. So thank you very much, Teck, for inviting me to this conference. I think I've been invited along really to be the fork on the panel. So I'm not going to sing either, that's absolutely lovely. But I think I have a different perspective on this. So although I really feel I do support students with difficulty, and my experience is all undergraduate at Imperial College, I do bring a different perspective to this. So Teck asked me to talk about some of my roles within this and what I do with students with difficulties. So my research, I was speaking yesterday about assessment and professionalism, and my research is into professional identities of medical students. So I thought I would look at my own professional identity, where I sit. So I work mostly in this building here. This is Charing Cross Hospital, based in West London. But I'm a GP. I'm a family medicine doctor. I'm a technique. And I still see patients within general practice. I have a caring role. I'm deputy head of the medical school, so I have a leadership role in the school. I oversee the exams, the assessments in school, and also increasingly the peers. So a number of our students, when they're asked to leave the school, after maybe 1 or 2, 3 attempts at the exam, will appeal, and those peers come to me, and then I have to decide on what basis we might allow that student back or not. I'm also something called Fitness to Practice Lead, which here I know you call PCBA, Professional Conduct and Board Activities. And this really is where things have gone wrong. So we've heard a lot about how we support the student, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens when we've done the support we can, and we're really going down the other side of it. We're deciding, are they fit to practice? And I spoke yesterday about my dual role. So I am there to support students. We have 2,500 in our school at Imperial, but I also feel I have a role for the general public to prevent the very few students that shouldn't graduate as doctors. And that's quite a hard message, and quite a hard thing to sit with somebody, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that. I'm chairing the curriculum review at Imperial, so that involves creativity and thought about how do we create better doctors. I come here and oversee the Imperial assessments. I'm delighted to have a role also at LKC. I teach, and I have a group of first years every year, which I really enjoy. So here are my first years doing postcard metaphors. So when they arrive at the medical school, I have them postcards. I ask them to choose a postcard that describes what they're feeling now at their start of their journey to Imperial. So, and I see them throughout the whole year, and I really enjoy that one. I'm a student myself, so I have a supervisor, I have to meet deadlines, I have to submit written work, so perhaps I can see it from that side as well. And I'm a wife from up there in brackets, but perhaps not professional, but definitely helping my identity. So where does this really take us? So here are a group of students entering medical school. They've just got their A-levels, they're very proudly holding their certificates. And then at the end of 5 years, we're trying to create this. So the graduates, the PGY1s going into practice. But as we all know, there's far more to it than just acquiring the knowledge. It's not going to be just what they're learning, the skills that they're picking up in terms of knowledge. And how do we actually get there? This is very hard. So I want to talk about what we mean by students with difficulty. And it's a bit of a joke maybe when we say, well, actually, they're all sad and all bad. but in many ways, that's true. And you can see these concentric circles overlapping. So we have the sad students, the welfare issues, the ones with problems, personal problems, homesickness, just difficulty studying, various issues. But that overlaps very clearly with mental health. And we were talking yesterday about the huge increase in mental health in our schools. Partly because students are more willing to report it maybe, but also there just isn't more. I think it's a very stressful environment with asking our students to work in. And of course, they both overlap with conduct. So if you're feeling depressed and not able to cope, then you're probably not going to turn up. You're going to have attendance issues and maybe not going to submit your work. So you can see how these three all interact within one student. At Imperial, we try and separate the welfare side of the school, so the things Tanya was talking about here, from the conduct side. But it's very difficult to do because there is so much overlap. And in terms of conduct, I spend a lot of my time reading these documents. So the GMC provides us with a lot of help. What do we do for these students with difficulty? At what point does it cross a line where we would need to act, where we need to do something that is different beyond just the support of the student? And the General Medical Council really helps us with that, with all these documents. Even more documents about students with disability. We were talking about that this week here at LKC. Increasingly, we need to support students with disability, and how do we best do that? If we provide so much support at the medical school level, will that mean that they'll have difficulties then in medical practice? And I think these are all things that we need to consider. And then, in addition, I spend a lot of my time actually now reading legal documents. So I'm qualified as a doctor and I feel I'm an educator, but now I'm beginning to wish I had a law degree sometimes. Fortunately, my husband has a law degree, so I sometimes go and ask him things. But increasingly, our students will bring a barrister to hearings, to appeals, to their fitness to practice panels. And we need to make sure that we're up to date with law. So this is the definition of dishonesty. That we have to be very careful to ensure that we are not calling the student dishonest unless it meets this definition, negotiation definition. So these are all things that I have to do in my daily work, above and beyond teaching and supporting the students. And this really matters, doesn't it? I mean, I've spoken about this before. I think most people are familiar with Papadakis' work from California. So she looked at doctors subject to malpractice cases in California, and they were 3 times as likely to have displayed unprofessional behaviour at their medical school. And this wasn't serious concerns, this was what we are calling low-level concerns. So unreliable attendance at clinic, not wanting accepting criticism, not replying to emails. Some of the things that we see quite frequently maybe in our learners. And then another study here in Texas, where there was a comparison with the unprofessional behaviours and positions sanctioned by the medical board. And again, these were just very small areas, lapses in responsibility, confidentiality, record keeping, very small, but maybe not major areas. So it's important to bear that in mind, how important it is for these students. So I spoke about this yesterday as well, but I think sometimes we need to accept that not everybody that we get into the medical school should necessarily qualify as a doctor. And it is difficult. It's the point where we make that decision, and it's very hard. These are young people's dreams, but we're often selecting them at age 17 when they are just forming their personalities. It's very difficult to know if they have all what they need, and whether they've made a decision themselves or maybe whether somebody's made it for them. I think a lot of the students I see in difficulty probably have changed their mind about wanting to do medicine. And I think that sometimes is the hardest thing for them to accept and understand. So what are we going to do? We need to look at how we talked yesterday again, admissions. How do we make sure that we try hard to admit the right people to medical school? It's very difficult because they're very young. Do we need to do some form of personality testing? I know here you do multiple interviews. We do a standard interview, but we are thinking of changing. In terms of the evidence behind admissions and all the things done at admission, the only thing that has ever made any difference to future performance in the postgraduate world is actually A-level grades, which is a little bit worrying really, because that's something obviously very simple. Everybody gets an A-level grade. It's not discriminatory, but we find it hard then to select the students. Remediation is a word that covers a lot of things, but I think can really help support some students who have got conduct issues or failing, who need some extra support with their medical and academic career, work. And I think it's important as well, I talked about not everyone should graduate, and we're talking small numbers, but we should be open with our careers advice about things they can do outside medicine. And at Imperial we have an excellent career service, and the students will go and see them and discuss their options, and it may well be that you come in at 17, you can't really see beyond, I'm going to be a doctor, but maybe another opportunity is going to be better for you. So these are hard messages, and I'm only talking a very small percentage of students, but this is what I spend a lot of my time doing at Imperial. So, as I mentioned, it feels like I'm weighing the judgment, weighing the scales here. And I like to think I'm this person on the left, this nice person. GPs aren't really nice, but too much of my time I spend this person on the right, and I find that hard in terms of my job. But even worse sometimes, on bad days, I think of this person. And so, although I take it very seriously, it is not very easy. So I wanted to share with you some of what I do. Thank you very much.
I don't think, I even drove for a few years, I don't think you're that person. Yeah. Okay, so the next part of the session, we actually prepared a case study, but before we move on to that, any thoughts, any comments, or any burning questions, maybe one or two? Yes? Yeah.
This is to say that I really like what you're doing because it's progress. But I just wondered, in terms of the external factors towards the burnout, you mentioned bullying. This is something that doesn't happen in Singapore because there's a lot of it in, you read about it in both the normal press as well as the literature. The Me Too movement. Australia's having a lot of issues around bullying, US, of course, and Malaysia. So this is something that is less so.
So actually, a group from NUS recently did a study on the disruptive behaviors. We call it disruptive behaviors, but really it was about bullying in Singapore, and this was across the island, including both nurses as well as doctors. And the incidence was unsurprisingly high. I think in terms of people who have experienced a disruptive behavior, it was somewhere like 60-70%. Am I remember right, did you? That was in Chinese work. And it included things from rather minor disruptive behaviors like rolling of eyes, which I understand from the ophthalmologist is a reflex action. You can't actually help it. To people throwing sharps, and there was actually about 2% of people have seen people throwing sharps. And in that survey, they even asked, have you engaged in professional, in disruptive behaviors before? And there were people who said, yes, I have thrown things. So yes, it is prevalent. It didn't come out in our focus group discussions. And we've had several mini crises regarding sort of bullying, sexual harassment, for few and far between, but one of the things that we're concerned about is that there's a certain amount of normalization of behaviors that are actually bullying behaviors, such that people don't even think about it and don't bring it out. And that's actually quite dangerous for the sort of culture that we are creating without realizing. And then of course there's a part of hidden curriculum as well. Right? If my senior doesn't say anything to someone who said something that's clearly out of line, then who am I to then say it? So I think it's definitely there. It is stronger in some departments from hearsay, but we don't actually have our own residency data on that. And really, before I spoke to Chinese, it didn't even come out in our discussions, and so we didn't look at it. Yeah.
It's interesting because when one of our trainees did a survey on bullying and he presented it at the faculty's weekly meetings, and they compared incidents of bullying in developing countries and developed countries, and it's much, much higher in developing countries. And one of the senior academics said, oh, but in Asian countries you expect to have seniors who can tell you off, whereas in Western countries it's more of a flat kind of structure. So of course it's okay to bully and to and all this things. So we're like, okay.
So I'll share with you a very disturbing experience I had recently where we were discussing the performance of a resident, and a very senior physician said that, oh, we should mark this resident down for professionalism issues. And we said, why? I said, oh, because the other day I scolded her and she cried. And that's really unprofessional. And the rest of us were like, maybe you should ask yourself what you did that put this person in a position where she cried in front of everyone during the ward round. So I think definitely prevalent, yeah, and they're very, very difficult to deal with, especially when it's coming from very senior people that were our teachers. How do you also approach that issue?
Maybe one more question from Prof. Yes.
Sorry, beg your pardon. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the session. Could I ask Joe a question? Joe, I'm the president of the Royal Medical Benevolent Fund, and we've seen the enormous increase in doctors falling off, with depression and really ending up in outer poverty, which is horrible. But also now we look at medical students and we see the same. It's just a disaster. And I really felt rather guilty last week when a student of mine came up, having been referred by the reviewer, because he had unprofessional behaviour, so really good mental health problems. And he said to me, he said, just look at my grades. I was doing very well and I went down. Now nobody picked me up and nobody picked up the fact that I was acting funnily. And I felt really as if I had a ruler struck across my hand. I mean, do you actually look proactively at the regular grades that are coming on everybody, if you see them dipping, pull them out and say, look, let's do something about it?
So thank you. That's a really good point. We should, and we probably don't enough. We certainly, if something else triggers that there is something about this student we're worried about, maybe a concern form as you have here, then we will look back at the whole student record, and then we will look at their grades and say, oh, they did okay in year 1 and 2 and something's happened in year 3. Do we actually look at that proactively and spot somebody? No. So I think that
using the data you showed from her, I think it just shows we should.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think maybe as we use more data, and I think here you do have a lot more use of data within your students. You're able to see we're going to be moving to something called programmatic assessment we spoke about yesterday, and that will enable us to spot what happens when a student's doing this and then suddenly does that. So that is something we plan to do, but you're absolutely right that it's something that needs to be done ahead of time, because once you spot it when something's happened, it's too late.
if I could just jump in here with a comment, that's something that we have found as well. For the internal medicine program, just now you were talking about people dropping off their administrative tasks and things like that. We actually use a conscientiousness index, which we tracked to see how promptly they are doing their evaluations, handing in their duty hours and things like that. And we've actually found that because we do this every 3 months, it helps us to pick up people who are struggling much earlier than their work-based assessments do, because they will let go of these things first before they will let go of things to do with patients. So once they have a dip in their conscientiousness index, that may activate their house to the faculty and then ask them to go and check out what's happening. Usually it's some turmoil in their lives that they're going through.
Could I just follow that up?
Yes.
So, sorry, it's just that obviously Imperial and had as an examiner, and there the students are asked to write down, and I was horrified, but write down everything they did, every hour of every day,
It's not my
every
school.
week. It's not your school. No, sorry, I think it's not your school. And I was sort of horrified this was happening. But what was happening with that was that they met the tutor every week, and therefore their fall in their grades and everything was picked up very quickly. And I thought that was good, but the thought of saying, look, I got up in the morning and brushed my teeth and, and they loved it. And the other thing they also did is made a comment of all the other students and what they thought of them. And this wasn't anonymous, this was with their names on the top. But again, if they said, Joe was behaving badly or did something, this would come up, and then again they would discuss it together and pick up the person who was depressed.
Okay, so let's move on to the last part of our presentation. What we have done is that Nien Yue has actually presented come up with a case study for discussion. So I think it's not limited to the panelists, but also for everybody. So let's welcome Nien Yue to present the case for discussion.
So, let's introduce myself. I'm Assistant Dean for Year 3, okay, LKC, but my previous life was actually in postgraduate medical education, and my department is general medicine. It holds the largest number of PGY1s who are actually, in local terms, house officers or foundational year 1 in UK system, and we see a lot of them. And this case, my disclaimer is that all characters are fictional, and it's composite of the years of observing the PGY1s in our system, and also in my previous life as a program director. Okay, so this is a happy, just graduated, but most of the graduates, they're always happy when they pass the exams, and they're all full of hopes when they come to work. Then day 1 in a new hospital and a new day, and today is the first day of the rest of the career. We may not realize that when we walk into the hospital, but we will realize it 1 month down the road. Yeah. So sometimes the hospital is a very, very harsh environment, because the first day when we're in medical school, we're all protected. It is a very protected environment, but the first day you walk to hospital, you realize this is the real world. The world has actually changed, And the ward round, the first ward round that someone may encounter is may not be the best experience sometimes, because as we all know, service is always busy, and you actually do not have as much supervision as you would like compared to medical school, or even support, because everybody is foreign to you. And you'll get this on the dark purple side is what the PGY1 actually said, and the light purple is the thought bubble that we actually don't see. So sometimes when we actually ask the PGY1 to clerk a case, and you find that the presentation is not satisfactory, and you said, did you ask this? And the PGY1 said, no, sorry, I did not ask. And the thought bubble is, actually I didn't learn this in medical school. And the next thing is, why didn't you actually list this consult and that's why the specialist did not come to see this patient. And UI actually says, I don't know that I have to do this. And actually the thought bubble is, this is all new to me, no one told me this, And then at the end of the day, why did you not call the family doctor to find out what's the medication, the regular medication the patient had? I forgot. And the thought bubble is, there were so many things I had to do today and so many instructions that this is just one of them, and I can't remember anymore. And then the last thing is, the nurse comes by and says the family is very angry because it's supposed to be discharged at 11 a.m. It's now 3 p.m. The patient is still sitting in the ward. Why? Because the PG1 forgot to write the prescription. And the PG1 then said, I did not mean to do this, and I really tried, So it's a very, very tough day. And the PG1 is then sent to actually go and talk to patient and relatives about the patient's admission, update on diagnosis and management, something very simple that we do on a day-to-day basis, right? So we got, So the dark composition is the PGY1, and the lighter purple is the family member whom the PGY1 communicated to. So, hi, your father has urinary tract infection, and we have just started the antibiotics. So the daughter asked, how did my father contract UTI? And the husband then said, we don't know, but we're investigating. In the meantime, we have stopped his blood pressure medications. Then the relative then got a bit guarded and said, why do we have to stop the BP medications? His private cardiologist gave strict instructions that he must never stop these. And then the houseman, who doesn't quite understand what's going on, said, I'm sorry, but this was my consultant's decision. And then, of course, the conversation goes a bit downhill after that. This is ridiculous. Are you the junior doctor? I want to talk to your consultant now. And this happens quite often in our local culture. People keep questioning the junior doctor and say, I want to speak to your senior doctor, especially when this happens. 2 weeks on, so this PG1 potted on, And then in the general medicine office, where the senior staff, registrars, medical officers, and the more senior individuals in the team came together and said, we can't put him on night call. And night call, although you're supervised, you have to be slightly more independent. And of course, there's skeletal staff, there's less support comparatively. Because he cannot even clerk a case properly. It took 1 hour to see a case, and I had to see the rest of his patients. His knowledge is really hopeless. He told the family the wrong thing and got us into trouble. He does not answer his phone, and I don't know where he is. And he's the houseman from hell. So this is the conversation that was had in the general office. Then the fateful Monday came, and Monday, after a weekend, is when we have many admissions after the weekend, and a lot of things that needs to be settled. It's often very busy. During the walk round, the consultant actually noticed that the PG11 appears spaced out, and he was not interested in the round at all. And after the walk round, he was virtually uncontactable, and his colleagues could not find him at all. So this is when the team started to panic. But some background history before we ask our panelists and the audience, what would you do? This individual graduated from an overseas medical school. He had below average performance in the university, failed the third year exam. So he's in a 5-year program, very similar to NUS program where there's a preclinical and a 3 years clinical. So the third year is actually a transitional year when he transits from preclinical to a clinical year. He passed the supplementary exam and also passed the final MBBS, but with borderline grades. There was no student internship posting in the school curriculum, and there was he did not do elective posting before he came back to Singapore. He came from a middle upper income family. His parents were both teachers. He's an older sister who is also a teacher. And he broke off with his boyfriend with the girlfriend 6 months ago when he decided to return to Singapore to work. And he's not in any relationship currently. He's often quiet, but he likes to play online games. He has a few friends since primary school, but none of them studied medicine. He had a few junior college friends who were working in the same hospital, but they were not close to him. And occasionally he confides in his sister, who's busy of late with her wedding preparation. So what should we do? This thing from after the walk round,
Ask the panelists, would you like to open it up to the floor? Okay, maybe somebody from the floor would like to give some thoughts or some ideas on how they would approach such a case. Any takers? If not, then we have to revert back to the panelists. So maybe Tanya, what are some of your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm scoring low on my conscientiousness levels at the moment because we were sent this case ahead of the session today, but I didn't have time to look at it in detail, for which I strongly apologise, and maybe I need some support. So my initial...
your house tutor.
I can see 3 in the room, so maybe you guys can have a glass of wine with me later. The first day is obviously feeling very overwhelmed and unprepared for this new setting, and I think that some of the background in terms of being kind of, obviously getting through the course, resitting the year in year 3 and kind of being fairly borderline at finals suggests that he's not necessarily a high flyer, but competent to get through because he got through. There's a lot of personal things going on, so the relationship broke up before coming back to Singapore, so that's obviously putting a lot of personal burden on. So he's come back feeling unprepared, maybe not the highest flyer, come into this new setting feeling overwhelmed, underprepared, had a few difficulty encounters, and the Monday seems to be the real crux. So the real concern that he seems to have gone missing in action after the ward round. So I think the first thing to do is to find him. You don't have to do anything until you find him. And I suppose my first approach with any of these things is to sit down and have a conversation and explore and to really find out what's going on from all perspectives. I'll let somebody else take over from there.
So I wonder if I can ask Nien Yue a little bit of clarification really in the Singapore context, because my feeling about the student, I completely agree with Tanya, very low social support and having a lot of difficulties. But how much of that background information would the seniors know on his first PG11 posting? Because I think one of the difficult things about supporting learners and students is if we don't know there's an issue, then it's hard to support them. But certainly something we have at Imperial is confidentiality. So how much information do the clinical teachers need to know about students in difficulty when they move into placement? We don't want students moving through the system carrying a label of depressed or has a problem, and so we ask the students usually to inform the consultants on their placement about what they feel happy about informing them. We have a lot of our clinical teachers who say to us, well, if only I'd known this, I could have done X, Y, and Z, but we feel that it's important to not label our learners as they go through the system. So yes, can I ask you that?
Thank you. I think that was a very pertinent question, and it's a balance because because of confidentiality issue, we often do not have that information, and particularly because this particular individual is actually from a foreign university, which means we have very little beyond transcripts, and certifications, and we wouldn't have all these background information,
Lawrence, would you like some comments or some thoughts?
Before you ask to refer him for counselling, so I thought I would just respond. I'm more keen to find out is that definitely we have to go and find him, and I was thinking it's more of who, and so we cannot expecting the senior physicians or the mentors to go and look for him, because the other thing is that there's somebody to go and find him, but is he willing to be found? So in case that he got missing intentionally. And the other thing is that I am also thinking more of even when we find him, so what do we do? And is there usually how is the kind of is it a protocol, or how do we respond to this kind of situation when this kind of potential crisis that may happen to the learners?
So maybe I should solve the mystery of where he went to so that we can carry on with the conversation. Yeah, correct. So and this is actually the real what actually happened. So he was actually called. We managed. His teammates actually have his contact number, and thankfully, he picked up the phone after a few calls. Yeah, correct. And he was actually on the MRT on his way to one of the neighborhoods, HDB, that neighborhood, but he couldn't tell his teammate what he intended to do. Yeah, and there was a lot of concern about whether he's thinking of jumping because he's going to HDB estate with high-rise buildings, yeah, correct. But thankfully, because I think there was no premeditation really, because so the teammate was given time off to go and rush out to actually look for him. And we found him and brought him back to the department. But then the question is, what do we do next? Prof.
I've dealt with this problem at different levels, but I think there's a lot of bias that started off in sort of what information was fed to the team. So we must be careful of using all this, some of which may be accurate, some of which may be inaccurate. What I find most useful is get an independent person who has not worked with him to meet up with him and talk with him. And when I say meet up, I don't think the hospital is the best environment for this, because all his colleagues, all the other allied personnel will say, look, this senior person is talking to this person. So actually it will be wise, I would think, to invite him externally to meet this person, and from there take it to understand him better. I have found always this a very useful thing, so that he's not seen as a culprit in jail being questioned, that sort of thing. And you get an open mind to look at it.
Yes, Prof. Yes. You there? Maybe you first, since you have the mic.
I'm Koh Nien. I'm the head of surgery for a few years already. We have over the years had quite a few of these cases. And my personal feeling about this is that once you allow the person to deteriorate to this state, then it's actually a big trouble. And actually some of these patterns of behaviors can be identified much earlier than we think. And the doctors are really not the persons who identify these behaviors. It is the ward nurses who actually see them day in and day out, and they notice that their performance is actually not very good. So over the years, what we have done is that we have actually a very close relationship with some of the ward sisters, and the ward sisters actually does alert to me certain individuals who are just not performing well, so whose peers are just putting more weight for him, and I feel that actually is quite useful to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question is around the when we're at a near crisis situation like this, particularly with medical students. Going back to the confidentiality issue, at what point do you involve the parents and the family? For some, they're already of an adult consenting giving age, and like this young lad, I mean, he is an adult. So at what point do you involve the family and parents in particular?
This is a difficult situation. Under normal circumstances, even with students who are under 21, we approach NTU has a policy. We see our students as adults, and we try not to involve parents at most stages. Sometimes it's the students themselves that want their parents to be involved in the process, and often it's because they need support from somebody else close to them. I think in this particular situation, obviously this case isn't a student, it's an adult, and but I think the point at which you go over that line is, this particular person, they were saying that they were wondering, was he going to go up to the top of the HGB and jump? So when somebody is considered at risk, I think that's when it's the same as the doctor-patient confidentiality. Everything's confidential, but if we think you or somebody else is at risk, then we may need to tell somebody. We wouldn't automatically involve parents. That's a very careful decision to be made, but it may be that we want to involve somebody else. So for instance, university counselling, or a psychiatrist or something like that. With this person, I think that once there's a talk of, I wonder if that's what he's got in mind, is you don't want to leave this person alone. You want this person to be with somebody all the time. I think it's the most important thing.
Maybe we can ask Jo for her own experience about involving parents from Imperial.
actually, it's exactly the same as what Tanya is saying. We don't involve parents in the normal run of things. We need students to express consent to involve parents. But something like this, if you're worried about a student, if we've not been able to contact a student and we only have a parent's contact number, we'll sometimes then contact a student saying, I wonder if you can ask X to get in touch with us. But we're exactly the same situation.
Could I just a quick response? Yeah. Must thank Prof for the reminder about mindful about the accuracy of the information that we might have, and looking for in case of biasness, and looking for independent person to engage the students. I thought if I may add is not only independent but somebody who is competent. And please do not quote me about the learn to die, okay? Not in this production. And but I rather is that is why I was saying is that somebody who's competent enough to handle this kind of crisis situation, and whether do we have developed a pool of or even house tutors or in terms of mentors in this kind of situation, and are they trained? Because otherwise we might also compromising the kind of psychological safety, not only for our students but also our educators as well. And in case of engaging these students who are so-called at risk, in terms of engaging them in emotional engagement and all these things, and also somebody who's experienced enough after engaging and to be able to decide when do they need to alert the family members and the parents. Thank you.
Just want to share that there's an elephant in the room, because what we are seeing is that this is not only here but I think universally and globally. Once the students, medical students, nursing students or other healthcare professional students, when they come from a student status to actual practitioner status, we don't have any system to look after their well-being. They are on their own. They are lucky if they get a couple of their colleagues together or their seniors to support. But there's absolutely no system.
Jipa, how can you say that?
So, no, I mean, you are trying hard, but basically, there's we have a very good undergraduate program, right? Where we have assistant deans. I mean, even in our school, we have assistant deans, student affairs deans, looking after them very well. They are very well protected, they're picked up, etc. But once they are in the hospital environment, very few systems, right, to support them. And also, I'm looking from the other side. A person in this state can compromise patient safety, team safety, and also self-safety. So all these three. So I think it's high time that we look beyond undergraduate to actual practice settings, and we see this seamless wellness program from undergraduate all the way. Then they become a consultant, and even as a consultant, we may need to develop our own systems in our health systems. So I think we need to engage our health systems, our leadership, and not only the undergraduate training program, and focus on students.
So just wanted to add on, because one of the things that we learned from our experiences with this sort of crisis, and we are fortunate. I agree with you, Dujipa. The residency has built-in support systems, but for the general pool of the medical officers and house officers going through MOPEX, there's very little support. And they move so much more than the residents, so they're really lost in the system. But we are fortunate in residency to have a pool of psychiatrists and psychologists who have been very, very responsive to us. So the moment we call, when we feel that there's a crisis, someone will respond. And so there is professional help. But one of the things that we learned from a recent case where is one of my residents who was outposted so she wasn't in our institution, she was in a remote location, who texted me and said, my parents are away this weekend. I think it's the perfect time for me, and I've made my plans. So of course that got all of us into a flurry. So we had to call her supervisor on the other side, who then approached her and she said, and she actually did confess that yes, I think today is going to be the day. And that created a whole crisis, of course. And what we learned from that, although we got the psychiatrist and the psychologist in, was that there were so many other people who were sort of harmed during that session because all the supervisor, her ward supervisor, the head of department were really affected by this situation, which dragged on for a few days because we then had to get her permission to call her parents to come and bring her to the hospital, but then they brought her home instead of to the hospital. And so the next day, the whole cycle started again, and things like that. Is that we really cannot depend on the non-trained faculty, and if they are in direct contact, we also need to make sure that we do the sort of like almost second victim support, because the faculty were really traumatized by this situation.
Sorry, I mean, for the medical students among us, I think currently for PGY1 there is quite a lot of support. So there is an education supervisor within each department. There is an education office that actually supports all the PGY1s. They have a helpline. We have counselors available. They also have opportunities to feedback to the ward sisters with regards to some of the challenges so that they can work better with the ward. So I don't think it's fair to say that there's no support. Much better than probably it was before. I don't want all the students to go away thinking that they're just be thrown to a deep end, once they graduate.
No, sorry, you don't get my point wrong. I might do some job as well. No, I'm not saying there's absolutely no support, but my point is that our support should come not from the medical school only, or the residency program, or the PGY1 program. PGY1 program we started only about 5 years ago, right? And before that there was none. And Prof Raja was the EPA, the PGY1 chair also at that time. So what we have now is much better than what we had earlier. But what I'm saying is that this responsibility should be from the health system rather than from individual programs or from the medical school. Medical school and programs can contribute, but we must have a higher system which actually takes care of its practitioners. Just like what in the morning we discussed and what Prof Simon mentioned, that if we can't take care of our own, how can we take care of the others? So that the system should be at a more higher level than the program or the school.
Maybe just to say that we were talking about, I think as we reflect on this case and many other cases that we've seen, there are actually always early warning signs, as Young has said. And actually for this particular student, and I think as we reflect also on student performance and the PG1s that we've seen that are in trouble, it's the transition that's difficult. You notice that the student actually failed the year 3 exam. It's actually year 3 is the transitional year from preclinical to clinical, and it's often very stressful compared to the first 2 years and the subsequent 2 years. And housemanship is the other transition that is actually very difficult, from a very protected school environment to a clinical working environment. And I think that's where early detection, when if somebody has difficulty with transitions and support systems needs to be built in. It's very well built in medical school because we have all support, but as Tuchika has said, that in the real world for some groups it may not be as well developed.
Can I just add a quick comment? Of course, postgraduate year ones, some of them who don't do well actually need a little bit extra time. So that's where I think opportunity should be given for them to move on, because we bring the best and brilliant minds in the medical school and something happens on the way. And as Nien Yue says, it is the transition may be a problem. Some of us require a longer time to adapt to the situation, and that should be the premise in dealing with some difficult problems.
I'm mindful of the time, so I have to call an end to this session. Like I promised at the beginning, there's no checklist, right? There's no easy answers to all these issues. I hope that all of you have some ideas of what some of the things that some of our panelists have spoken about. But the important thing I think I'd like to summarize is that there are issues. This is an issue that is not only in medical school but also in practice. I think we are looking at, to answer to Jipa's question, I think we're looking at this seriously. For example, at a National Healthcare Group, a part of a work group called the Joy in Work Committee. So actually it's not just we want to have joy for all our. But I can tell you that it's a long way from reaching there. But it's a start. At least it's a start. And the other thing is also for the many people who are trained to actually to deal with students with difficulty. If not, then they get very traumatized, and what as I said, what Faith has said. So I thank all of you for your attendance, and please enjoy lunch after this. Thank you.